Razzle frazzle. Hey, Jeremiah. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
Hi, Benji.
There we go. Welcome to the Laffy Place Movie Club for Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Men Tell No Tales, also known as Pirates 5.
P5.
So, this is the one that took place after the fourth one, which kind of didn't match anything, but then brought everyone back for the fifth one, which kind of wrapped up the third one, but then teased a sixth one, which hasn't yet happened. Right? I got that right?
Yes.
Yeah, essentially. I look at the fifth one. I don't necessarily say it teased a sixth one. I think it basically they undid the cacophony that was created by the end of At World's End, which in my opinion is my least favorite of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. So Dead Men Tell No Tales undoes the mess that they made of the ending of that film, and in so doing left a well-loved villain kind of in limbo. And so they pay homage to that in the little teaser at the end. But I never really felt like that little tag was saying we're getting a sixth film.
I felt that it was we're getting a sixth film and you guys should start lining up now. Because when they were filming, the original slate was to film 5 and 6 back to back. And then they kind of canceled the sixth one. And then we just jumped from not talking about the movie to the teaser at the post credit scene. All of a sudden,
jumped right there.
Yeah, because that's really
movie club.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, so one of the problems I have with Dead Men Tell No Tales is they've crammed so much into it. They introduce a villain who, is sort of inconsequential. He basically, gets everybody back on track and back together again. But when you lose him, it's like, eh. They also introduced this weird head-shaved witch character who really does nothing in the film as well, but they have all this setup. So there's all this, for lack of better words, dead weight in Dead Men Tell No Tales that kind of weighs it down and makes it far from the perfect resolution. But to me, it fixed the cluster that was At World's End. And I love Dead Men Tell No Tales. It's such a good setup for such a poor resolution in At World's End. And so to me, this kind of like, I almost wish this could have eradicated At World's End completely, where you could just jump straight to Dead Men Tell No Tales. But I will say I do enjoy On Stranger Tides for the lost episode that it becomes, because it has no bearing. You could watch 1, 2, 3, and 5, and nothing from 4 even comes into play. Not even a mermaid swimming in the water.
That is true.
Yeah, you don't need to know anything at all, really, other than who Jack Sparrow is. That, going back to our solo rants, this is no Jeremiah rant, Benji, so don't even press that button. The reason that the entire villain is there is to name Jack Sparrow. Again, we don't need it, so why do it? And they also took pieces of 2 and 3 with what's her name, the witch,
Tiadama.
Yes, and she says that she gave Jack the compass, and the Black Pearl had something to do with all that. But this movie changes the whole compass story. Oh, thanks. Now I'm key.
Backstage.
But it's one of those ones where you're watching it. If you've watched the first 3, again, you don't have to watch 4. It not only erases bad things that happened at the end of 3, it erases story points that happened throughout 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean,
so essentially what you're saying is it's like their version of X-Men Days of Future Past.
Yes, so time travel should come into play.
And I think it's important too to look at, you know, the timeline of how the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise became what it is. Because, you know, Curse of the Black Pearl kind of wrapped everything up. You sort of felt like that was the film that they wanted to make. And then there was the we can't leave money on the table. And so they created the franchise essentially. Now 2 and 3 were filmed back to back. And like I said before, I love 2. 2 was the highest grossing of all the Pirates films. And I think the reason was it was such a shock that they went and killed the main character. And so people went back and took their friends because they were like, you're not going to believe how this movie ends. And then the third film was so wishy-washy. But I mean, to me, the whole like Compass lore, I completely forgot about by the time this movie came because there's so much time between them. And like, especially because this pretty much ignores on Stranger Tides, you know, you're really talking in terms of story continuity. They're going back at least 10 years from that to this, which is kind of crazy. I mean, Will Turner by this point has a like 16-year-old son.
I think he was 7 when he went down to see him the first time, and then I think it was 11 years later, so he's like 17, 18.
Right. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't know. I guess I don't hold Pirates of the Caribbean as a film franchise to that much. Like, you need to get everything in continuity with each other just because so many film franchises break those rules all the time.
You should have been on our X-Men 2 shows. Those were...
X-Men's one of my favorite film franchises, but you know, that is another one. It just contradicts itself left and right, but it's fun, so you kind of forgive it.
I think continuity has become more important as storytelling has sort of expanded. You know, Star Wars with sort of it's not so much the movies, obviously, you know, that's not that much to handle. But when they started doing all this extra stuff, you know, people wanted to make sure it felt like it was coherent. It wasn't just some random guy writing a story, because so much science fiction has had like spin-offs that don't matter. They're not legit. And people feel, I mean, they probably don't have to feel this way, but they feel like if it's not official, it's not part of the canon, then, you know, it's somehow less. And then I think when, you know, Marvel came around and everything was, it's basically one big movie, you know, it has to kind of make sense together. Otherwise, you know, what's the point of having a cinematic universe if you're just going to do whatever you want? I mean, that's what makes it epic. It's, you know, it's its curse and it's its blessing. But
really
holding Pirates to that standard was done by, you know, 3 different directors who, you know, didn't have a grand storytelling vision that I think like Marvel has at this point with Kevin Feige. I mean, you know, the canon game, you know, is really comes from 2 places. Star Wars, which has George Lucas, who would basically decide whatever he wanted. And then, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we have Kevin Feige, who's one, you know, a brilliant storyteller who makes it work. But so many films have these big canon holes if you look at it as a franchise. And I think we sometimes are putting our 2020 lenses on, you know, a 20-year-old franchise, which is hard.
The other thing I was going to say is I think TV really changed that game as well. In particular, Lost. Hi, Nathan. You know, I think Lost really shook things up in such a way where now most TV shows that are planned for longer than a season, it's literally someone's sole job to keep the continuity, to go through each script and be the expert to say, no, this contradicts that. We have to change this. You know, soap operas have had those kinds of things for a while, but even that's kind of a joke, just because soap operas kill people and bring them back from the dead all the time. Yeah. And then like you said, Star Wars, I mean, Star Wars kind of hit the reset button in many ways, you know, and that's basically Pablo Hidalgo's whole gig right now is this can or can't happen in Star Wars because XYZ.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have Star Wars has a whole story group, and they're I mean, I think their name is a little bit of a misnomer. It's not, you know, they're not devising the storytelling for Star Wars, but what they're saying is, you here's the characters, here's the planets, here's what happens there, and try and make sure basically nothing contradicts each other, and then perhaps suggesting tie-ins. Oh, why don't you make this Batu that may, so it ties into the land or something. It's not. So there's a whole team that does that at Star Wars, and I know that there's people that do that at Marvel, and I mean obviously the comic books is has been doing this for decades, and they can hit the reset a little bit easier than a movie can, but you look at old TV shows and you'd have the same actor play 3 different roles because no, you weren't supposed to pay that much attention to it, right? Law and Order, 3 guys can be a corpse one week and then a lawyer next week, but it's just, you're right. I mean, Lost changed that game. I think binge viewing and DVR and sort of repeat viewing to the extent, and the internet, obviously, where everything's chronicled.
But one of the biggest problems, like you guys are saying, oh, well, it didn't really matter. You're talking about a movie that the entire story is based off of what happened in the 3rd film. So they are banking that the backstories, because if not, you don't care about Will Turner or his son or Barbossa's daughter. That is probably one of the worst fits into that story as a whole.
Well, no, but I think that's why these kinds of movies have gotten this sort of what I call franchise storytelling has gotten better, is because we care. If the only reason you cared about Endgame the way you did was because you knew who those characters were and what they meant. It wasn't just, some random guy playing Peter Parker this time. I mean, they established it, they developed it. I mean, look at the way DC messed all that up with their movie franchise, right? You have to establish the characters and then you get the payoff. And I'm not saying that Pirates' sort of continuity issues are excusable. I'm just saying is at the time, it was the norm. It wasn't until you got, I would say in the last 15 years that people really started to care about continuity. And sometimes maybe it's pendulum has swung the other way where you try and make something fit continuity, a minor, it's one thing to keep the major characters and major plot points intact, but, keeping a
one-line throwaway about the compass.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's things that matter and there's things that don't. And it's hard to know. I mean, even George Lucas, would say continuity is for suckers. And I think Clone Wars suffered because of that, because you had no idea what was happening because there was no through line to it.
You mean Attack of the Clones, or you mean the TV series?
I mean Clone Wars, the TV series, because it jumped all over the place. They kind of had to excuse something. He had a story he wanted to tell, and that was probably a great story. But if it made more sense in the context in which it was presented, it would have been more impactful than, going back and having to do an episode 3 years later that explains why an episode 1 year ago. I mean, that's a lot to ask.
That's why the last season of Clone Wars was the best, because it was like, okay, we're filling a hole that we didn't create. That's just a story that we want to tell.
Well, and I think that's why things like Rebels and Resistance were better, in my opinion. I will grant that they're smaller in scope and pretty much it's pretty obvious it's smaller budgets, but it was focused on a small section of the universe, which meant they could tell that story without having to worry about, galactic ramifications every week. Say that with big milestones.
Steering back on course for Pirates.
I see what you did there. Oh, I see what you did there.
So,
alert.
Now at this point, we know there are at least 2 pirate films in various stages of production at Disney. One is considered a reboot, and the other is a little bit confusing, but I think takes place in the same world, but kind of off to the side. And they just made casting announcements for that one. Is that correct?
The Suicide Squad Pirates crossover?
Yeah, I think it's a little confusing because there's sort of remaining legal issues with Johnny Depp. And so I think they're kind of going in parallel. I don't know if they're going to make both. And obviously nothing's happening now, but I think they're still trying to figure out what they want to do, and maybe do a Pirates with Johnny Depp and then do sort of like a spinoff kind of like Hobbs and Shaw was to the Fast and Furious franchise. I've never seen a Fast and Furious movie, but
So there's
how,
going to be a Red driving a car?
well, first you're going to go into one room and there's going to be someone named Pat. And then you're going to go into another room and there's going to be someone named Jamie. And then you're going to go on the dumbest party bus you've ever seen with safety restraints, because all my party buses have safety restraints. And you're going to go see a 3D movie that you see in Hollywood.
I would like to say that I am so impressed that you remember the name of the pre-show characters, because I don't even remember half of that.
We paid close attention because they had to be gender neutral names.
Yes.
So that anyone can play them.
Why do you think Chris has to grab the black Les Paul at Rock and Roller Coaster? And Jamie was actually, I think, one of the Playhouse Disney, equity performers.
Yes.
Was like Jamie.
But yeah, so the series is continuing in various ways, but as it stands right now, it does seem that Dead Man Tell No Tales is the end of the Jack Sparrow saga. Like, this is the cap on that, right?
It's funny to look back at when Pirates 1 came out and how important it was for Disney, because it was an action adventure franchise. And at the time, Disney was known for like Princess Diaries and their animated films. And there was definite vibe that the Disney brand skewed female. And, Pirates was that's why you had Pirates and Princess parties, right? Like, it sort of, divides up into sort of stereotypical lines. But yeah, you girls did the princess and the boys did the pirates. It wasn't spectacular success because it was, putting two things together that don't fit. But now that Disney has Marvel and Star Wars, I feel like the Pirates franchise is just not as important. They're able to make big franchise blockbuster films that appeal across, gender lines without pirates. And, I think other movies have suffered. I think that's why we don't have a Tron. We don't have some other movies that we've heard of that were trying to scratch that itch before Disney went on their purchase spree, because, there's only so many summer release dates between Marvel and Star. I don't mean summer. I mean, like, blockbuster release dates between the animated product, Star Wars, Marvel, and now with, essentially more Marvel possible with the Fox acquisition. Like, I just don't know that they see a need. And, they might look at it, they might, poke around and see what they can do, because, franchises never die. But I don't think that they are as it's as necessary anymore as it used to be at Disney, when they were making movies like, Tomorrowland, and because they wanted to branch out into, sort of big tent filmmaking.
Yeah, and really, Pirates was the first attraction film that actually hit. I mean, Mansion made money. Country Bears was. Let's not talk about that. I'm not doing that LP movie club.
I don't think
Country Bears features one of our LP founders in the.
That's true. That is true.
But I was reading something earlier where one of the biggest problems that Disney felt was that Johnny Depp wasn't bankable anymore after Lone Ranger tanked, and that's why they kind of started backing off a little bit more. That again, this is just something I read off. Let's go Wikipedia. But
I hate that. I think in today's society, or today's filmmaking society, the stars don't matter. I mean, you got to get good performances, and you got to get people that do the characters. But I don't think Lone Ranger is Johnny Depp's fault. I think it was a bad movie with a franchise that was irrelevant. I mean, Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, the biggest franchise out there, and no one saw Dr. Dolittle. I think studios and the public, probably more the public than the studios at this point, have or over worried about, who's a bankable star. Yes, Chris Pratt is likable. He does a good job in Guardians of the Galaxy and brings something to the role. But Jurassic World wasn't a success because Chris Pratt. It was because it was Jurassic World.
Yeah, but Pirates without Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp became pirates for at least 2 generations. I mean, we're talking like this movie came out 3 decades ago. This was 3 years ago, and
Pirates 5?
yeah,
Yeah.
The one we're doing the
and
movie.
yeah. So it's like, I didn't see it again. I saw it when it was in the theater, when there was a big media push and they gave me a free code for Disney movies anywhere. I watched again, and then I watched again just yesterday. And to me, really the teaser at the end was probably the biggest highlight for me. Like, I would love to see Will Turner and Davy Jones and Jack Sparrow back in that type of thing, because that grouping was what made the second and third film as fun as it was. The fourth film, Johnny Depp was the star. Can you remember anything else? I mean, yes, the three of us can remember everything about it, but if you ask the normal person, I had this discussion with somebody. It was like, so I'm watching Pirates 5, and they're like, there were 5 of those? And then I'm like,
Stranger Tides apologist. So going back to, you were mentioning, Benji, Pirates being Disney's boy franchise. To me, I've always known more women fans who were very passionate about it, and more male fans who were just like, yeah, it's a summer blockbuster, so I'm going to go see it. But they weren't as invested as all the women fans that I knew. And I think, we owe Johnny Depp a lot for really creating the character. I mean, if you go back and read about the formation of Curse of the Black Pearl, he really was very involved in creating Jack Sparrow, which is the anchor for the whole entire franchise to date.
I agree, but I don't know that much like anything, the character grouping is what matters. It's not one character from the film. It's how the characters interact, interesting characters interacting with other interesting characters. You don't want to watch 2.5 hours of Johnny Depp being Jack Sparrow. Jack Sparrow is, quite frankly, obnoxious, and you need someone who's going to call him out on that. Right. And I mean,
all pirates.
Angelica was the person calling him out on that. Like, I really liked that dynamic. I liked
Pirates 3. But I'd probably go 1, 5, 4, 2, 3.
Yeah, one really is still the perfect film.
One is, yeah. I mean, Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl was kind of at such a pinnacle of lightning in a bottle, or striking a tree, as the case may be, that it was really untouchable.
But I feel like I was kind of hoping with Dead Man Tell No Tales that it would take it very much in a park direction. Like, I feel like the first 3 were, the original sort of story, whether you like it or not. Like that, that was sort of like the story they wanted to tell about Jack Sparrow, Will Turner, and all that. Fourth, I think, was kind of trying to start something that didn't catch on, with the public. You can debate whether it's a great movie or not. But I was really hoping when they said, we're going to take it back to basics, that they'd really bring in, tell the story of the ride, or tell, be a little bit more, obviously that's a limiting, 12-minute ride doesn't make a 2-hour movie, but like really bring it back to the sort of Mark Davis humor and fun and spirit of it, instead of making, because I think some of the complaints of the Pirates movie and the Lone Ranger movie was just, they're not fun. Like they become sort of dirgy, and Jack Sparrow's fun and that, but the first 15 minutes is, usually a blast, and then it just drags and drags. And I mean, Pirates 3, I think, is the worst of it. Like, I think that movie probably was like, the running time was like 6.5 days, wasn't it? But I just feel like I was hoping they would sort of, even cut away some of the mythology and just get back to a fun pirate movie, which they did to a point. And I mean, I liked the Barbossa plot. A little predictable, but I liked it. But I was kind of hoping it would just be a romp. Like,
Yeah.
Pirates shouldn't take itself too seriously.
No, and the only Easter egg, the only payoff that we get for all of Pirates 5 is the Wicked Winch showing up, which again, we as the nerds are like, "Ooh, look at that!" But the regular guests going to see, or the regular guests in the park, have no clue that the ship is named the Wicked Winch, because unless you sit there and it breaks down, you can't read it.
Well, it's not even called the Wicked Winch anymore, And
in terms of like paying homage to moments from the attraction, they had kind of exhausted the majority of them by this point. Like, the other thing I will say is Pirates of the Caribbean as a ride, like, yes, there is a sort of story there, but it's not really an exciting story when you just break it down into the overarching narrative.
There's not really a story, but that's not what I meant. I just meant in terms of tone. Like, I mean, I thought it would be cool to kind of maybe even have like, they're in the bayou and then they go into this whole crazy underground pirate world and there's some sort of treasure adventure. Not, a lot of times in they use moments from the ride as like a quick gag or an Easter egg. Mm-hmm. But they never really delved into, I think, or mastered the tone.
They did have the bayou homage in 2 and 3. That was where Tiadama was. Yeah. But it took itself very seriously. There should have. That was for any of you who weren't with us at the beginning. That was Jeremiah's like first rant out of the gate. Was that exact thing, the compass contradicting narrative. But like the bayou scene, it would have been more fun if there had even been like a subtle Easter egg heard in the background of someone yelling like, "Throw us a roll," something like that.
Okay, we should focus on 5 now. We've gone all over this franchise without talking about 5.
Well, I feel like because 5, in my opinion, wraps up this franchise, you really can't, like you mentioned, to go into 5 and really know what's happening, you have to remember what happened in At World's End. Like, you have to remember how that film ended for 5 to mean anything to you. Mm-hmm. There's really not a recap. But one of the things I wanted to say was just, I remember seeing this film with Disney Parks blog through a Disney World event. And I remember like how much they focused on the fact that Keira Knightley did not come back, that you would not see her. And so that, like, I can't watch this film without thinking in my mind what a big deal that was with that audience of diehard Disney Pirates of the Caribbean fans, and suddenly having her come up over the hill at the end and everyone gets goosebumps and just starts cheering. I mean, it was like going to see a Star Wars movie and having, the blast of the scroll starting and everyone losing their minds. Like, it was that level in that audience. It was in AMC 24's Theater 1, the big one with the balcony. And that was a really cool moment.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the highlights. And, watching it last night, I remember that, oh, she's not coming back. But then watching it, it almost seems like they filmed it after they filmed everything else. And they're just kind of like, okay, we're just going to put this together right here and shoehorn it in, because it's awkward moments with their son, who I watched the entire 2 hours and 10 minutes. I couldn't tell you his name to save my life.
Jack Turner?
No.
Henry Turner.
There you go. See?
Played by Brenton Thwaites. I'm mispronouncing that. So sorry, Brenton. He's on DC's Flash, I guess.
But the characters, Jack Sparrow buries everybody. That is, from the first movie till this movie. If he's in a scene, he buries everybody else. Will Turner and what's her name? Because they stand out with the love story. Elizabeth, yes.
So I was thinking about it here too. I mean, in some ways, it almost bothers me that after that moment, they go back to Jack and he's watching them through the periscope and then, says something snarky, because it would have been very poetic. The first film does not begin with Jack. Jack is the fourth or fifth main character that you get introduced to in Curse of the Black Pearl. You first are introduced to Will and Elizabeth, and they're really the emotional through line of that series. Also, really the whole first trilogy. And since this was, untangling the mess they made with At World's End, with the unsatisfying way that ended, it would have been really nice to just have that be the last shot before the credits roll. Just take it back to where it all began. It's Elizabeth and Will, and they're back together now.
But that's the thing is when they put the tag, like I was so shocked at the tag because I kind of thought you don't need a tag to make a sequel, but when they put it there, it just felt like, okay, well now I want to know what that's about.
I think so. The way I interpret it is they basically undid everything with the trident, because they broke every curse that there has been. Basically none of that happened before. Obviously Barbossa's dead at the bottom of the ocean now, but basically that curse no longer exists. So Davy Jones is his curse was never a thing, so he's back in a way. Maybe it creates more questions than answers as I talk out loud, as I think with my words. But to me, it was just a nod to, you loved this villain. He was your favorite villain in the series, probably. And, let's just give you a little joke that maybe he's still out there.
Oh, no, it was totally, this is the next storyline of them fighting and him back. Because, if it would have been just Will waking up from the dream, then I would have been like, okay, that was great that, it could happen somewhere, maybe in the future. We know that he's back. But then they pan down and they have the barnacles on the water underneath the bed and everything. It's like, so he was there. It's a setup.
Yeah. So with the Aztec gold, I don't know, because basically with that trident, they say, we've destroyed all the curses. So,
but they returned all the Aztec gold, and that
I guess it's just sitting in that cave with the monkey.
No, they say in the second one that the island went pear-shaped and sank to the bottom of the ocean. That's why they don't have any of the gold.
I'd love to know Aaron's thoughts on this movie, but he does bring up a good point that this is the most about this he's thought about this movie since its release. That
is very true. If this hadn't just come to Disney Plus and we weren't doing it for the movie club, I would not have watched it again.
No. And Aaron, I don't know if you're still there, but what do you think about that Hocus Pocus game? We're going to play it, and I want to know your thoughts since you're a resident Hocus Pocus expert.
Yeah, my copy arrived today. I'm very excited to play. I was delighted to tear open the package and find my book.
Also, I understand, I am all about bringing more women into the stories, but Barbossa's daughter, her backstory is so convoluted. The journal, the ruby, this, that, and they wrap it up in 30 seconds when they're on the ship and Barbossa says something about the book. And then the way she finds out is seeing a tattoo that's been on his arm this entire time that we didn't know anything about. Okay.
They're playing.
Treasure. Yeah, I mean, so I go back to Tia Dama, which, you already mentioned, contradicts, this film contradicts some of what she set up, but she had a line, I think in Dead Men Tell No Tales, that was, or I'm sorry, this is Dead Men Tell No Tales. In Dead Man's Chest, she has a line where she says you have a sense of destiny about you, or something like that. And to me, this film is like the fruition of that, because it is Will's son, it is Barbossa's daughter, bringing everyone else together again, and then, bringing them to this better ending.
Also, can we talk about Barbossa's the only person that actually looks like he's aged in these 18 years since part 3?
Well, Johnny Depp cakes on a lot of makeup to play.
Yeah.
And every character he plays since the 90s.
Yeah. So,
can Can we get Mike on here to defend the ride now?
Sometimes I'm the only one who still cares about this old series. It's rather sad. Yeah, well, I gotta say they're still working on movies, which means it's not completely dead.
Yep.
I think international markets have definitely helped it, and especially in emerging markets, this is what Pirates is. We know probably when I say Pirates of the Caribbean to everyone here, we think the ride first, but outside the United States, it's the movies, and that's why you have the amazing experience over in Shanghai, which if they have to make a Pirate 6 just to justify bringing that kind of experience somewhere, not that I want to get rid of the original Pirates, but if they want to do like a sequel right next to it, I would let them make Pirate 6.
Yeah.
So I think we beat this movie to death, and I know Jeremiah is going to be over at the experimental prototype cameo of tomorrow. So I think we're going to wrap up. The next movie we've got is going to be on Thursday, and it is 30 for 30 Winning Time. So we're kind of highlighting the Disney bundle, some of the stuff you can get for just a few bucks more on Disney Plus. So we're going to be doing Winning Time, one of the 30 for 30s available on ESPN Plus. And then next Monday, we got Incredibles 2. So
Electric Boogaloo?
Every time.
I haven't done it in so long.
No, I do it every time. In any case, thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time. Jeremiah will be live at around 12 o'clock Pacific for his tour around Epcot, 3 o'clock Eastern. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.